Welcome. All right, so we are going to be painting this little beauty right here. We are only going to be using the colors black and white. If you have oil paint, you will need paint thinner. If you have acrylics, you will need water. I'm actually using acrylics today. I have black and white, and I actually just put it on this little piece of plastic. You can use whatever you want, a paper plate. Some people buy the frames at dollar stores and use the plastic out of those frames or the glass, and they use a glass scraper to get the dried paint so that they can reuse their little palette. All right, so you will need a cup of water or paint thinner. You will need paper towels, and I have 3 brushes here. I have like a larger flat, a medium flat, and a small flat brush. All right, so we're going to go ahead and start. I'm going to show you the smaller version of this. I also have canvas paper that I've cut in half. This is the smaller version in color, which we will be doing as well, but first I wanted to do the black and white. I actually tape my canvas paper. I tape it down so it doesn't move. Make sure that you have the part that's got the teeth. It's almost like it's gritty, so make sure that you use that side. A lot of people will actually prime this first with like gesso, and we'll do that next time. So if you want to go ahead and get some gesso so that you can see the difference. First, I want you to see it's going to use a lot of paint. These little teeth really absorb the paint, and you're going to use a lot of paint. So I want to do it this way first so that you can see the difference, so that you can see this is exactly why artists will prime their canvases first, because it's a lot smoother and it doesn't use as much paint. All right, so we're going to begin, and we're going to begin with our larger brush. Anytime we're covering a large area, surface with paint, you want to use your larger brush. And again, we're going to look at those values. Don't even worry about the trees right now. We're going to look and see about where our little horizon line is. And we're going to see the brightest parts of this picture. And it's going to be about right in the center of the canvas. So what we're going to do is we're going to dip our brush in the white. If you want to dip your brush in water first, you can do that and then kind of grab you some of that white. And we're just going to start laying in this white. Now again, we can't see it. We can't see the white. That's okay. We know it's there. And we're just going to start laying in the white. We're going to go to about our horizon line here. All right, so now I'm going to gradually grab a little bit of this black, and I'm going to mix me like a light gray over here on the side. Show you here, we're going to mix a light gray. Does not have to be perfect. And I'm going to go a little above the white, and I'm going to start pulling that down into the beautiful pure white that I just used. You see how I'm this is how you create that gradient. I'm just going to gradually start pulling it down. I don't want to cover up all my white. What you don't want to do is take a bunch of gloppy paint and go into your color that you're going to blend in. The trick is to make sure that it's almost a scratchy brush. You just want to pull a little bit of that color down, and that's what's going to give you that nice gradient. We're also starting with our brighter colors so we don't have to keep cleaning our brush. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go a little darker. I'm going to add a little water to that brush and to that paint. I'm going to thin that out a little bit. And again, I'm going to go up. And I'm just going to kind of pull that down into that lighter gray. Okay, now I'm just going to pick up some pure black. Because if you notice in this picture, this is going to be pretty dark up here. So I'm going to pull up pure black. I'm going to go up here first. And I'm going to start pulling that black down into that sky. Artists will do that. That's a little trick. Anytime you want to pull the eye to the emphasis of your painting, you want to darken your top, your bottom, and preferably your edges as well. And that is a little trick that will pull the eye right into the center. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to come down here because we've got sky and we've got water. So we're going to have a lot of the sky reflections down at the bottom in the water. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pick up some of this white, quite a bit. I'm not even going to clean my brush. That's okay. I'm going to go to about here. I've got some of that color in my brush. That's okay. Now we've got a horizon line in here. We're going to come back and add some white there and blend all that out. But we actually have some like mountains. We actually have like some little mountains and stuff right there. So that's okay. We're going to come fix that. All right. Perfect. Now down here at the bottom, we actually have a little piece of land. So I'm going to go ahead and pick up some pure black and I'm going to go ahead and put that in. I'm going to go ahead and put that little and you don't want this perfect. You want it kind of bumpy and it kind of goes up, kind of does this. I'm going to fill that in. Don't make it perfect. We don't want it straight across. We want to give it some character. That's okay. I've got some of that white in my brush. That's okay. All right, perfect. Okay, now I'm going to do the same thing in here. I'm going to go ahead and lay in my little landscape. That little horizon line. It's going to be, yeah, that's about it. That's fine. We can put our little, we're going to do the same thing that we did here. We're going to put our little horizon right in here. I'll go across first, and then I will kind of give it some character. Now your horizon lines you want to try to get as straight across as you can. Don't worry so much. We're going to be coming in and fixing all this water. We're just laying in our basic colors and values right now. All right, I got a mountain up here. I'm just going to kind of bring this up. Use that little point of my brush. I'm going to create a little mountain up here. Make it a little jaggedy. Again, I don't want it perfect, so this is where I'm just going to come in, pick up some more paint, put a heel over here. Perfect. All right, so I also have it almost, I don't know if it's a wave or another little landmass, but we're going to add another little dark shadow. We're going to come from here and we're just going to kind of slant a line this way, and we're going to create, I don't know if it's a wave, I don't know what that is. We're going to add that deep shadow there because again, these are my darker areas right here. All right, so now I am going to clean my brush. This is where I'm going to pick up some white. I'm going to come in here. I'm going to blend some white in here and make this a little brighter and blend this out. I'm going to kind of scoot in some clouds here. I'm going to pick up a little bit darker gray in here, and I'm just going to start scooting in some clouds. Pick up some black. Now clouds will actually get really thinner towards the inside. That's going to give the illusion that they're further back. So when you do your clouds, you want to make sure that they're a little bit thicker on the ends, and then they kind of get thinner towards the center. Now I'm just kind of picking up some black. I'm picking up some different values in here. I just don't want it to match the color in the background. If you want anything to look closer, you want it darker. Anything further back, you're going to lighten it up. Okay, so I'm just going to... Now usually people use round brushes for clouds because they're more organic. So organic shapes, we usually use some round brushes. I'm just adding some different values in here to add depth to these clouds. You just kind of want a little bit of paint. That's the trick here. Clouds, you want to use a little bit of paint. Your brush should be scratchy. I'm just kind of scratching on some clouds back here. Make them a little darker in this brighter area. You can put your clouds wherever you want. Again, the trick is little paint. You should have a scratchy brush. Put some up in here. Make sure they kind of get thinner towards the inside to add some depth. You don't want them too sharp. You want them a little roundy. And they're usually kind of thicker in the center. And they just kind of get thin on the ends. Again, kind of play around with this. Just pick up some different values. You want some highlights. You want some shadows. This is where you're just going to kind of play around with it. Really get a feel of this paint and what it does on this canvas. All right, I think that's all the clouds I want. Maybe I want a few tiny ones back here. This really creates some depth. I mean, I am barely putting pressure. And see how I've created some depth? I've created some tiny little clouds way back in the background. That's a cool little trick to really add some depth. All right, so now that I've got my clouds, make sure your clouds have different values. You want some bright areas in those clouds. You want some darker areas. Remember, if you want to pull it closer, add darker colors. If you want it to appear further back, make it lighter. I'm going to add some more values in here. I'm going to kind of put some more layers on those clouds. This is where you can just kind of play around with it. Really get a feel of this. All right, so I've created some depth in the sky. So now what I'm going to do is now I'm going to start adding some depth to the water here. So I am going to first pick up some black, and I'm just going to start putting in some darker areas, some shadow. I'm just barely scratching, I barely put paint on my brush. And I'm gonna very randomly make these straight across. You wanna make them as straight as you can. And I'm adding some shadow. Now I'm going to pick up some white and I'm going to add a little bit. You don't want too much paint. Now I'm going to start adding some highlights near those shadows. Wherever you have a shadow, you're usually going to have a highlight right near it. That means your light source is really going to be shining somewhere brightly near a shadow. And again, I'm just going to, usually your highlights are going to be on top of your shadows. And again, I just want you to just kind of get a feel of the brush, get a feel of the paint. I'm even going to come down here and get this. Okay, this is some water here. I'm going to add like a highlight on top of this. This might even be a little wave crashing in. I'm going to add a little highlight here, get rid of that edge. Now, anytime you have water next to a shoreline, it's always going to be highlighted because where the water's kind of, so I'm going to dip my brush in white and I'm going to go across this little shoreline in some very random places, and I'm going to add white. This is where your water's kind of crashing up. Just a little trick. Perfect. All right. I'm just going to kind of scratch in some different values of gray in here and see how we've created water. There's also a little body of water right here where we're going to put these trees. So I'm just going to take this dirty brush. I'm not even dipping it. I'm not going to dip it in anything. I've got some paint on there, and I'm going to just add a little scrub in. This little very random body of water. Look at that little trick. See how that kind of looks like water there? I'm going to add a little black here just to add some different values to create depth. There we go. Maybe a few more highlights in here. And voila. All right, so now we're going to put in these little palm trees. Now remember, I was talking about shapes. First of all, we know that we want to make sure that these trees are different sizes. Okay, we don't want them all the same height. In nature, that hardly ever happens. So if you really want something to look really realistic, you want to make sure that you're going to use different sizes, different shapes. You don't want anything perfect. So we're going to lay in these palms. This one's kind of bent, so we're going to give this one some character, and this one's smaller. So I'm going to start with this one here, and I'm not even going to clean my brush. You can wipe it off if you want. And I'm going to be using the tippy toes of this brush. I'm going to dip the tippy toes of this brush in black paint, and I think I'm going to, let's see, I think I'm going to start at the bottom and go up. So trees are usually thinner at the top than they are at the bottom. So I'm going to use more pressure, and I'm going to gradually let up pressure as I get to the top. So I'm going to go up, I'm going to press a little hard, and then as I'm going to pick up some more paint, that's okay. And I'm going to release pressure as I get up to the top. Okay. I'm going to curve this one. I'm going to go up a little higher here. And we got a little tree over here, so I'm going to use light pressure here. Light pressure. And I'm going to kind of bend this one out. All right, perfect. And I'm going to kind of scratch down in here because I want to get rid of that little trunk here. So I'm going to add, I'm just flipping the brush on its side. There we go. You can even add some more shadow over here. Perfect. All right, this is where you switch brushes. So now we're going to need the smaller brush. And we're going to create, palm trees almost look like a spider. We're almost going to create like the spider. They're going to curve out like spider legs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to dip my brush in water because I want to thin this paint out just a little bit, almost to an ink consistency. That way I get a smooth glide as I'm creating these little legs. So I'm going to curve. I want one up here. I want one here. I'm going to curve one down. And maybe I want one more down. I'm going to curve here. Now I'm going to start going in the other direction. I'm going to curve out, and then I'm going to pull one down here. And that is about the basic shape of your palms. Now we'll do the leaves in just a little bit. Right now I'm going to do the same thing here. Curve, light pressure. Make sure you add a little water to your brush. Curve, curve down. Maybe I want one to come all the way this way too. Sometimes they do that. I'm going to go in the other direction. Curve, curve, curve down. Perfect. Now this one is a little smaller and a little daintier, so I'm going to make these a little shorter. Curve, light pressure. There we go. Perfect. All right, so now we're going to do those little leaves. And with palm trees, they definitely, we're actually going to do this little line technique where we're going to take the brush and we're going to start at the center and we're just going to pull some little lines down. And the palm trees actually get thicker towards the middle, the beginning of the tree, the middle, and then they get thinner as you come out. So what we're going to do is, again, we're going to wet our brush, dip in some of that paint. We're going to start in the center, and we're just going to put the brush on the tippy toes, and we're just going to barely touch and pull these lines down, just like this. I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm just going to pull all the way to the ends. And I mean, I am barely touching the canvas when I do this. I'm doing like little hash marks. Same thing on this side. That's okay, you can come on out a little further than the line you drew. All right, I'm gonna fill in the center because you usually can't, there's a lot in here, so I'm gonna fill that in. Perfect, if you wanna put a few hanging off the other side, you can, but you usually can't see a lot of those. They usually fall down, but if you wanna put a few, kind of hanging on the other side. Perfect. All right, and we're going to just keep doing this little technique. I did not even put my brush in the paint again. You want to make sure they're different sizes. Don't put them all the same size all the way across. And I'm pulling down. Now, a fan brush will make beautiful palm leaves. And I'll be showing you that technique too, maybe in a different painting, but we'll get a fan brush so I can show you how easy it is to make. But this works too. Look how I didn't even need to pick up more paint. I'm still using that paint on my brush. And I'm just pulling these. Now the trick here is to make sure you're making these different sizes. And I'm gonna fill in that center. I'm just gonna kind of tap, tap, tap. Make sure that center is kind of filled in. I'm going to put a few on the ends here just to make it look like I'm just going to kind of scrub in some black to make it look like we've got some little palms kind of hanging on the other side as well. All right, beautiful. Now I'm going to pick up a little more paint. All right, so this little tree is very dainty. I'm just gonna barely touch the canvas here. And I'm just pulling some leaves. Okay, I'm gonna actually dip in black with no water. It's gonna give me a deeper black to add some different values in here. Make this a little darker. I'm going to tap the center. This is where I'm going to add some on the others, just a few on the other side. You want to make sure they go to a point towards the end. If it's not a point, pull your brush out and make it into almost like a little point. You can make them longer than what you initially had. That's okay. This is where I'm going to go in and add some very random deep shadows. I'm just taking my brush and I'm going to add some very random deep shadows in some of these palm leaves. This is going to create depth. I'm just pushing in some very random deep shadows. Perfect. All right, so we have our palm trees. This is where you just kind of look at it and see where you need to fix it. There we go. All right, so now we're going to do the stars, and I'm going to show you a little trick how to make stars look like they're glowy. So what you're going to do is you're going to take a little bit, let's use our flat, now this is, again, we would usually use a round brush for this, but since we have flat, that's okay. I can still do it with a flat brush. I'm going to mix a little bit of gray, a light gray. I'm actually just dipping my brush in that white. I didn't even clean my brush, so I've already got some gray. And I'm going to barely dot some little gray spots in this painting. Just a few. We only want a few to actually glow. You could even use pure white to do this as well, but we're going to actually be putting, I'll show you why we don't use pure white. All right, so I've got this little gray, and this is where you're going to take your finger. I'm going to use my pinky, and I'm just going to kind of blend that out. Now here's the white. Well, the white will work too, and I'm just going to kind of blend these out. Now I'm going to take the back side of the brush, I'm going to dip it in white, and I'm going to put a little white star right in the center of these little glowy areas. And now we've got little glowy stars. All right, so now I want some different size stars. So I think I'm just gonna take the back of my brush. I'm gonna make them really small towards the back. And look at this, I didn't even have to dip my brush again. This is giving me the variety that I need. Now, you really want to go in some of these branches to really give it depth and put some stars in between there. Look at that, how that really creates depth. Put some stars in some of these areas behind these trees. That's a little trick. You just want a few, especially in your darker areas of the painting. All right, wonderful. And this is just where you kind of look back. You want to take that small brush. You wanted to add some more highlights in your water. Create some more values somewhere. This is where you can do that. All right. So this concludes our little palm tree. Our next one, we will actually do color, and I will go ahead and throw in color for the next painting. We'll do it in color. We're going to do the same techniques, but we're going to do this in color. All right, I hope you had fun. I would really love to see your paintings. I always tell people your paintings are so much better than mine, so I would really love to see them. So, all right, everyone have a wonderful, beautiful, inspiring day.